Once it hits your lips. You keep your love locked down. You keep your love locked down. Oh, there you are. How are you getting on? Thanks for joining me again. I don't know why. No, thanks. This is keeping me sane. Giving me some sort of feeding my car lust somewhat. Being able to talk to some virtual people about it because I can hang around with my buddies. You also caught me reading the illustrious Max Power magazine. Apologies. I hope everyone's well. I hope you're all keeping well. Friends and family are well. And again, as I say, if people aren't well or if you've lost anyone, my heart goes out to you. We're getting there. We've flattened the curve apparently. But don't jump the gun. Keep following the rules. And we'll get on top of this sooner rather than later, hopefully. Max Power magazine. So this cropped up when I was going cataloguing my magazines. This is one of my tasks I gave myself during lockdown. Because I've hundreds of car magazines, but they're all just piled up in storage in absolutely no particular order. Different publications mixed in with each other. No dates. It wasn't chronicled by date or issue number or nothing. They were just all over the place. So I've only wanted to put them all together, put them in the right order, and I've put them into a spreadsheet. That's how sad I am. But it was enjoyable. But this cropped up. It was the only issue of Max Power that cropped up. Now I did buy more than one issue when I was younger. Maybe I got rid of a lot of them. I don't know why this one hung around. For those who don't remember Max Power magazine, as you can tell from the cover, that's actually quite a respectable modified car. I'll give it that. It's an MR2, last generation MR2, and it doesn't look too bad. It's probably got some good performance enhancements on it, but generally it was ostentatious body kits, really loud exhausts, tacky, undesired attention cars. For example, this is one of the cars that the magazine themselves made. It's an Opel Astra Coupe, which is actually a pretty good looking car because it was designed by Bertone. But that, yeah, you get the idea, the mesh grills and stuff. Look, I was a teenager. And the modifying car scene was big back then. But we all have things we're not proud of from our youth. Saying that as well, Max Power was at one point the most widely circulated, and the most widely circulated, I think the highest selling motoring magazine in Europe. I think they had a high at one point of 300,000 copies a month, which was huge in publication terms. It's since closed down. It's been closed down since 2011. For one, it stopped selling. People kind of got sick of modifying cars. Also, it did have a bit of a reputation for me, a bit risque. Both with like encouraging people to, break road laws, and they used to have cruises like we all do now. We all have car meets, Cars and Coffee for one example, which are civilized events. These car meets though are illegitimate in a car park without permission, with people doing burnouts and donuts. One thing that used to happen as well, so as you can see from the front of the, other than the car and the front of the magazine, there's a semi-naked lady. So it had that issue, which even back in the 90s and mid-2000s was seen as a little bit un-PC. So they did have like models who would come in and do photo shoots, but then when they went to these cruises, they would also encourage young ladies to do things they shouldn't. So they usually have Max, the cruise used to have in the back of the magazine. So they'd go to one of these cruises and meet some of the people, see some of the cars, encourage a bit of havoc. And they'd also talk to some of the ladies who were there. Now I can only show you half of this page, and what if I got kicked off YouTube because there's some things that aren't PG. There's some of the ladies there, and they used to interview these ladies and ask them just general questions, the normal stuff like age. Then one of the questions is, have you ever been pulled by the fuzz? Favorite part of your body? Would you shag an ugly bloke with a nice car? But how often do you flick the bean? And I shit you not, the last three questions are face or boobs, ? Which can be interpreted in many ways. Spit or swallow. And then this one, and I forgot about this up until not so long ago, because Johnny Smith, I'm sure many of you will know, Fifth Gear, that electric channel he was on, what was it called? Fully Charged. He now does his own thing, Car Pervert. Everyone knows Johnny Smith. His big break was with Max Power, and he used to say he used to write up some of these interviews, and he would have to actually ask these girls these questions, and they would answer this question. One of the questions is pink or brown. And yeah, I think we'll just leave it there for Max Power. But I'd say Johnny Smith used to, this is a good segue, Johnny Smith used to work for Max Power. And Johnny Smith now, one of the other things he does is he has a YouTube channel with Richard Porter called Smith and Sniff. Richard Porter is, if you don't know him, his alias is Sniff Petrol. Sniff Petrol is a humorous motoring website he has, and that's what he goes under on Twitter. But Richard Porter was one of the script writers on Top Gear and the Grand Tour. He's a great writer, and he's released a few hilarious motoring related books over the years. So this is a recommendation I have to try and counteract the bottom end of motoring literature to something slightly more higher brow. So a lot of people have probably had this book if you're watching this video, but if you haven't, I recommend it. It's called And On That Bombshell. And you can tell by the three silhouettes on the cover what it's about. So to say, Richard was a script writer on Top Gear. So this book is just crammed with behind the scenes gossip and just talking about the three lads, and it goes into like how he started in the industry, and he even brings up the infamous incident that brought an end to Top Gear. Speaking of that as well, I understand why people don't like Clarkson. He runs his mouth quite a lot, and that incident didn't win him any new fans. But I don't care what Jeremy Clarkson has to say outside of talking about cars. I think I'd get along with him. He seems like we're on the same page humor wise, even if I don't agree with everything he says. I didn't agree with him punching a producer in the face, even the fact that he was Irish. How dare he? But I am a car enthusiast because of Jeremy Clarkson. There's no ifs or buts. I didn't have any big car friends growing up. Most of my, a few of them were interested, but they didn't. They wouldn't be as nerdy as I became and still am. And like my father and my older brother, don't care. Never did. But 8:30 every Thursday, BBC Two, Top Gear, and I'd enjoy it anyway because it was about cars. But you'd wait for the segment that Clarkson was in because it was just brilliant. He's and that's why Top Gear, the new form of Top Gear, when it came out, was so successful. Well, him and the chemistry he had with the two lads. It's not something you can manufacture, and something he discusses about in this book. One thing he does mention in the book as well is that when new Top Gear became very successful, they were asked by the BBC if they would shift from BBC Two to BBC One. But there was a psychological thing that they said with them, was that like moving to BBC One just put more pressure on you. You could make mistakes on BBC Two and they would kind of let you away with it, but if you make a mistake on BBC One, there's no coming back. There was too much ramifications moving to the BBC One, and it's just they always saw it as a BBC Two show. It was always on BBC Two. Old Top Gear was on BBC Two. The heyday of Top Gear, although they have the new format is starting to work again. They found a chemistry, although it will never be the same. So the fact of, if you haven't heard that, but like a couple of months ago, it was announced that Top Gear, Harris, Flintoff and Paddy McGuinness are going to be moving to BBC One. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, because in that book, Mr. Porter is adamant that it stays at BBC Two. Yeah, so there's a top tip for you. And on this bombshell, he has loads of other great books. Does Richard Porter, and check out that YouTube channel that him and Johnny Smith have. It's this essentially. It's two lads sitting in a car, talking shit, and it's obviously way better than this. Obviously they can't do it at the moment because of coronavirus, but they do have a podcast as well. So if you look them up on any of your podcast apps, you'll get them. It's called Smith and Sniff. You'll get this second hand for pennies. I recommend. And he has another book coming out, I think by the end of the month, which will be packed filled of really boring car facts, which I use like boring to the masses, but to us car nerds, I'm sure it'll be very interesting. Car news, well, there actually was some car news during the week. The Germans, being the efficient nation that they are, they lifted some of their coronavirus restrictions, and the German manufacturers were quick to get back to the Nürburgring to start testing their performance models. And probably the big one that jumped out is there was spy shots of what the magazines and websites are saying is the 992 GT3. Now I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's the GT3 RS, because it's got a really, really aggressive rear diffuser. It's got a top-mounted rear wing, like swan neck rear mounted or top mounted, which makes more efficient airflow under the wing. And it's got like an S duct, just ducts coming out from the top of the bonnet. So all the channels of air underneath and up over the car. So I'm just saying because it's that aggressive that's the RS. I could be wrong. We'll wait and see. I just think the GT3 will be slightly less aggressive than that. But we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong. There's a few other cars. The Arteon Or. So there's an Arteon Or line, but this is going to be a full-blooded Arteon Or a la the Golf and the T-Roc. I like the Arteon. The Arteon is Arteon, however you pronounce it. All Volkswagen cars are named after wins, by the way. Yeah, it's a Marmite car. I like it. I think it looks cool. I think it looks like what cars of the future in things like Robocop should have looked like. And yeah, I like the Arteon. So they're making an Or version. It'll be all-wheel drive, 300 plus horsepower. Yeah, I'm sure it'll be a nice thing. And there's a shooting brake, sportback, whatever you want to call it, version of the Arteon coming out, which spy shots I'm not too sure about, but you have to take spy shots with a pinch of salt. Yeah, so that was good. What else was on the Nürburgring? The Tiguan R. Who cares? If you want a Tiguan R, buy a Golf. German cars. Another segue there. See, I'm getting better at this shit. So to keep up with tradition, rummaging through my model cars, I decided to pick out one to talk about. Mercedes. So again, some of you will know what this is. This is the CLK GTR. This one's missing a wing mirror. So this was a car that Mercedes built for the FIA GT Championship that they had in the late 90s, which was incredible. Like Porsche GT1s, McLaren F1 GTRs, serious cars, and the racing. Well, the racing was good, but this car was so successful that I think it was in before the 1999 season. No one else wanted to compete because this car was so competitive. Mercedes dominating a motorsport, who would ever have thought it? And this was a cool thing. I think this was the 98 version when they won the championship, driven by Klaus Ludwig and Ricardo Zonta of former Formula 1 fame, drove for BAR. He did a race for Jordan as well at the old Hockenheim, the one was just two big long straights essentially. Because someone who was Ralph Furman got injured. Ralph Furman, who was Irish, drove for Jordan, and he had a huge crash, and he had to sit out a couple of races. They won this. So this was a V12. I think it was a 6-litre V12, naturally aspirated, and just a beast. They went to Le Mans with this car. They altered it slightly. The aerodynamics were a little bit swoopier. And they decided that the V12 wouldn't be reliable enough to go for 24 hours. They switched it to the V8 from the C9 Mercedes Sauber Group C car, because they thought the V8 would be more reliable. So they went to Le Mans, were quite competitive time-wise, and I think within the first 2 hours, both cars broke down with engine failure. But they didn't give up. They returned the following year to Le Mans, 99, 2000. I'm not good with my years. They came back with the CLR, it was called. So it wasn't a CLK anymore, it's a CLR. So it looked quite like this, but it was much, much more swoopy. It was almost like it was just like would slip through the air. And that car was incredibly quick. So quick, it would take off. In practice, Mark Webber flipped over and crashed. So for the race, they told the drivers to avoid getting in too close to following other cars because it would disrupt the airflow. And they made a few little aerodynamic tweaks to it. And then in the race, Peter Dumbreck, I think it was, flipped going down the Mulsanne Straight. And yeah, so they decided to withdraw the other cars from the race then, because it seemed to be a little bit of a design flaw. They made road-going versions. You had to make road-going versions of these to enter the GT Championship. So they made 20 hard tops and 6 roadsters, I believe. And they also had a couple of prototypes, which actually went up for auction a couple of years ago. And that would be a cool thing, because all of the road-going ones have like 1 of 20 and 1 of 6 plaques, whereas the prototypes, obviously prototypes, which is cool for starters, rather than having a build number on them, they just say limited edition. Yeah, and the Sultan of Brunei is the only person who has right-hand drive ones. He has a right-hand drive coupe, hardtop, whatever you want to call it, and a roadster, which have probably never been driven, because that man has thousands of cars, and yeah, they're just rotting in a warehouse somewhere. So that's the CLK GTR. Best thing about this model is the whole rear, if I can get it off, the whole rear clamshell comes off, even has the ducting inside, the carbon fiber ducting, and you can see the V12, and you can even see the inboard suspension and everything. So that's my model car for this week. Yeah, so there you go. CLK GTR, then the CLK LM was the one they entered in the first time they did Le Mans, and then they switched to the CLR. There you go. So you might not, if you didn't know about that, there you go. There's another car you didn't know about, and now you do. So that's pretty much all I have to talk about today. I will be back because I have nothing else to do. Hope you enjoyed it. Be safe, be well.
Absolutely unbelievably, because to see an accident of these proportions, you just have to fear the worst the moment it happens. By the time the rescue crews got out there into the trees, and he was some yards from the track.
Basically okay, badly bruised perhaps, and certainly shaken, but he was all right.
Well, what saved him here is that the car landed on the belly pan with the engine and gearbox hitting first. It didn't hit trees, it went into soft earth, and that undoubtedly is what meant that he came out with a little bit of bruising, no other injuries, and he was the most relieved man around.
Im Gegensatz zu dem Mercedes mit der Nummer 5. Der Silberpfeil mit Mark Webber am Steuer hebt ab, überschlägt sich und landet auf dem Dach. Genau bei Tempo 300 steigt sein Wagen senkrecht in die Luft und fliegt 30 Meter neben der Rennstrecke in den Wald. Mercedes zieht sofort auch den letzten Silberpfeil aus dem Rennen. Das Wrack bis auf ein paar Prellungen unverletzt. Nach den Unfällen im Training hatten die Silberpfeile die Anweisung,